All right. Rob has sent his regrets, and he hopefully will be popping in a little while. So I will call to order the BEBC meeting this evening. And I'd like to respectfully acknowledge that we're meeting on the traditional and ancestral lands of the Coast Salish people where we live, work, and play. We have a motion to adopt the agenda, please. By Trustee DeGroot, seconded by Elizabeth Croft. And all those who approve? Motion carried. We have the minutes of the November 24th committee meeting, and I would like a motion to adopt those minutes, please. Trustee Croft, seconded by Trustee DeGroot. All those in favor? Motion carries. Our action list, Mr. Sandquist, can you do that for us?
I can. So we have one item on the action list, and it has been on here for a while. It's the rainbow crosswalks. And I'd like to inform the committee that a invitation for quotation will go out sometime in February, the month of February, so next month, to find a contractor to hopefully begin that work in spring break and evenings and weekends to attempt to accomplish that project by June.
Great, thank you. Is that all we have?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so our petitions and delegations today, first of all, we have the report on the school meals. Can we bring our petitions into our fold here, please? Are they all here? Oh, there we are. And oh, there we go. That's the last one. Okay, I'd like to welcome you all to our meeting today. We're really anxious to hear what you have to say. So thank you for joining us. If you'd like to begin, Mr. Longridge, that would be great.
Hey, Squale. Ikonasilam Nama. I think Colleen, is she in the waiting room? Can you bring her in and allow her to share, please?
There she is. Here we are.
There.
There we go.
Thank you. And I was wondering if Rod is in the waiting room also. He might join after. So first I'd like to introduce, I think you know everybody on here. I don't know if Fatima has a camera. Fatima, are we able to see Fatima's face? I would like to introduce Fatima De Silva. She's the executive director and head chef of Nourish Cowichan Society. And Corrine Thompson is Rotary Starfish coordinator. And I'm not sure if Corrine has an official title, but she definitely is a huge partner in our endeavors. And Rod Allen, who is the president of Nourish Cowichan Society, and who just had their annual general meeting. And you have been sent their last report, which just came out last week, just for your information as we go through. I would also like to recognize Colleen, who helped considerably with the presentation tonight, and is a vice principal at Alexander, as well as an incredible organizer, linchpin between the number of schools that grows increasingly larger in coordinating our food effort throughout the school district with our principals and vice principals. So we could go on to the next screen, which is, given the, I know that really we wanted to focus on what's been happening this year, but I think we need to set a bit of a context. And that's why that timeline is there. So perhaps I will start off with inviting Fatima to speak a little bit about Nourish in regard to the timeline of when Nourish started and then started the collaboration with the school district.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
There she is, and we can see
Yeah,
her.
you can
Thank
hear
you
me?
so much, Fatima.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Oh my God, it seems like a lifetime ago when we started all this. Nourish was born pretty much in 2017, but the conversation started at the end of 2016 and was born out of that need that we had identified in the community, especially in the schools, of so many kids going to school without meals. So in January 2017, we started the pilot project at Cohiman with approximately 90 students. Since the very first month of its inception, we realized that the job was going to be much bigger than just one school. So we made a decision to register as a society, which followed by application to become a charity organization. By March 2017, we were granted that charity status, and with all our documents on hand, we placed that very first call to the school district to request a meeting with, back then, a superintendent was Rod Allen. So that very first meeting that we had, that probably was the biggest step for Nourish to become where we are today. Within no time, there was a sense of a shared vision and the full support from the school district and the board of trustees to help us launch this program. The intention was to run just for a year or so to figure out if we knew what we were doing and create some policies around the distribution and deliver the production of the program itself. So that idea of running the program just with one school for 1 year was quickly tossed aside because by June of that year, we were in 3 or 4 schools. I believe it was 4 schools. I can't even remember right now. Our initial funds at the time came from our own pockets. We started doing small fundraisers. We started with a small tea party and then was followed by our very first gala. And with that, we had raised enough money to do a full year for the 4 schools we had. Again, that plan of doing just a few schools, it kind of went up in the air. The more we talked with the schools, the more we knew that we needed to expand a little bit quicker than that. So I think it was June, I still remember that date, June 29th of 2017, when a formal partnership with the school district was made official by the school district donating that space that we now call the Nourish Kitchen. We never felt so blessed and so grateful. We were doing this from such a tiny little kitchen. There was no way we could have done that during COVID. There's no way we could have increased the number of schools without this space. We have been operating from this space since March 2019. And we thought the space was good enough and perfect for the years to come. Just a few weeks later, COVID hit, and suddenly the space wasn't big enough. Once again, the school district stepped in, donated the extra space for us to expand with the hamper program. So 3,000 square feet is being added to our space to properly deliver the program. But I think the biggest change for us has been that period between March and August or September, because we went through the entire summer season this year. For me, one of the things that this pandemic has done is really awaken us of the needs that were in this community. We thought we knew, we thought we were handling things properly, but it took this much and that much of conversation between the school district and the community in general for us to find out actually what that need was. And that translated the fact that between the end of March of 2020 and to September of the same year, we have made, at that point, we had made, I think it was 6,255 hampers to the family. And thanks to that collaboration with the school district, those hampers were delivered by the staff from the district. EAs have come and helped us put all this together. We didn't do this by ourselves. And the immense collaboration of the Starfish. But when we translate all those numbers into meals, we did the math between the weekend bags, the hampers that we now probably at 6,300, because we still continue doing those for the families that are really in need. Up to date, because the numbers you have on the report are until November, because that was our year end, we have now made more than 350,000 meals. And that does not count, well, until we actually sat and did the math and put the numbers together, we're kind of wondering, why do we spend so much money? It's not until you see those numbers that it becomes a reality of what are the times we're dealing with. The silver line is it has forced us to see what the reality is. And for that, among all this craziness, I am extremely grateful that we're able to do the job we do. I'm extremely grateful that the school district has stepped in as a really strong partner in this endeavor, because none of this will be possible without that partnership. Because we wouldn't have ways to deliver the program. We wouldn't know where the families are. So our gratitude and the vision of Rod stepping in and helping us back then, and now being, again, a leader in this program, all of that has come from the school district. So I'm immensely, immensely grateful for it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fatima. That was amazing. And perhaps just a brief piece from Corinne in regard to Starfish, which is the other Rotary partner that we have in this, that fed the organization in regard to the logistics. Corinne, if you are there and we can see you, that would be awesome.
I don't know if she's been able to log in.
Oh dear.
Hopefully, you're on mute, I think.
Oh, there we go.
Am I here? There I am.
There's Corinne.
Okay, I think I was being managed, which is great. I get that. Briefly, I heard that. So Starfish was a program that was started in Abbotsford way back in 2010. Our Rotary clubs heard about it in 2016, and there's 4 Rotary clubs in School District 79, and a few of us came from each club. We met with the school district a bunch of times, as Rod and Candace can attest to, and we were finally able to do a pilot project in Coheman in 2017 for April, May, June, kind of the same timeline as Nourish and Fatima started up. And so over the next couple of years, we brought on a couple more schools, and just Pre-COVID, we were doing 90 bags a week, 50 at Coheman, 25 in Lake Howatchin, and 15 a week in Chemainus. And how we ended up all together here was after the schools closed down after spring break, we weren't able to source food anymore. We were getting food from 49th Parallel, Country Grocer, and Walmart, and they just said their supply chain wasn't working. So through an emergency food task force meeting, Fatima's on that meeting, and she reached out to me and said, you know, I'm pretty sure I can order those groceries for you. So we met, we talked about what the bags looked like, and what we have now has been created through that. Just a huge thank you to both the school district and to Fatima for all of the collaboration that went into putting this together. We started off slow in the halls and numerous rooms in Mount Provost School, and it's starting to be a pretty slick operation now that we're in the foods lab. And there, right after we shut down for COVID, we weren't actually making weekend packs. We were actually making hampers from April till end of August. We did it every week till the end of June, and then every 2 weeks over the summer. And those were some pretty hardy hampers, and it was wonderful that the school district stepped in, and we would pack them all on Wednesdays, and Thursday morning and Friday morning we were there at 6:30 in the morning, getting them outside to load them on the buses, and it was just amazing how that worked. And so we packed yesterday. We're in the wood workshop, and we did, I think, 364 that we did for the school district, and we have volunteers taking those out to the schools. So just an amazing project. Thank you.
Thanks, Corinne. And Corinne, also, not only did you bring her incredible logistical sense and organization to the hamper piece, she brought herself and lifting and laying and helping and doing anything necessary for months, and still does that. So thank you so much for everything that you contribute. And Colleen is going to step into the next slide, and we're going to focus as we move into the winter of 2019-2020.
Thanks, Tom and Corinne and Fatima, and thank you for the invite to this important group. I stand among giants, and I look up to each of you for your leadership. Thank you. Just to take a step back from today, just before the pandemic sprung, we had food programs supported within district from a variety of sources. A large source that supplied funds for in-school food programs was the Community Links dollars. Many school PACs were providing support for food programs in schools. Schools also saw many staff, some vice principals, educational assistants, youth care workers, and teachers, either cooking food at home and bringing it in, or sourcing grants to support food programs within schools. Nourish was providing predominantly breakfast and programs at that time, but also large amounts of ingredients to provide to support lunch programs, and Starfish is running in the programs. And at that time, we had Denise and Tom pulling together principals and vice principals from a variety of schools to look at the big picture. Like food is a big deal. It's an essential key component to supporting our kids for learning. How can we do this better? Because you can imagine individual schools having individual staffs going out and shopping individually for those schools' lunch programs. That cost and the time associated with that can build up quite quickly. And also how can we support more kids? And also the food that was being provided at different schools looked differently. So there was some spotlight on a couple of inequities we thought we could do better with. So those conversations are already happening. And then, Tom, can you expand on what the Community Links dollars were?
Yeah, I imagine that the board knows, pardon me, I can run, but I can't hide sometimes. The, the board knows about Community Links, but I just want to say that this is something that is ongoing, a ministry grant. And it does help with staffing 4 of our kitchens so that we can take the food that we get and we can prepare food. And it also, we distribute some funds to all of our schools to a greater or lesser degree, depending on need. That is an ongoing program that we're doing, as well as everything that goes on through Starfish and Nourish and all the other PAC supported food programs that are within our schools. So Community Links is just another component of what we're coordinating and doing.
Thanks, Tom. And well, the food programs were inclusive, so they were accessible to anyone. We were removing the hunger as a barrier to learning, so we could focus on learning and the relationships. And food is a great way to bring people together, to build relationships, to co-regulate in the kitchens, to have those rich conversations while preparing food and breaking bread together. Many amazing conversations and experiences and relationships have been built through food. So it's been an amazing conduit for those conversations. Tom, you wanted to start this slide?
Yeah. As we got into June of to March and June, as you know, the significant date of Tuesday, March 17th, was when Dr. Bonnie Henry came out and I won't say closed schools, but definitely suspended in-class learning. And we did maintain schools open for our essential workers' children, as well as priority learners within our school district, as you know. But it did change everything that we were doing in regard to what we needed to do and how we needed to pivot. And I think that's a word that's going to continue. The word pivot it seems to be constant through this time. Is that April 2nd, we started to roll out the hamper program and get in line all the school kitchens, the 4 kitchens that we had already access to, mentioned in the Clink piece. We started using those as well. And Colleen can continue in regard to the teams that were put together from the schools and how that works in coordination with Nourish and Starfish.
Thank you, Tom. So yes, it was a huge coordinated effort. So in the far on the right-hand corner of your screen, you see Sylvia pointing to the many boxes that were being filled for the food hamper program. Sylvia is a youth care worker in Chimena Secondary School, part of the open learning program. Huge volunteer through the program. And in the bottom right or left-hand corner, you see Blair helping prepare some of the wraps, the hundreds and hundreds of wraps that the Alexander Kitchen is one of 4 kitchens, help support the perishables that were going into the hampers in the spring and in the summer. So we definitely had quite a few kitchens come on board to support Fatima and Karine. Also, there was a principal and vice principal teams put together by Tom and Denise. And we met on a bi-weekly basis at times to talk about problem solving and talking about where the needs are. So school staffs were communicating with families and checking in and finding out how can we help you? What are your needs? And those names and families' names were coming into this massive spreadsheet, which then helped coordinate where the hampers would go, where specific locations are best, and that they could then get distributed out to the families. And the operations team at the board office was huge in getting the buses together as well as coordinating those efforts. And it couldn't have been done without the huge support from the board and the senior management.
And to that effect, I just add that at that time, that's when the emergency food task force was created at the beginning of the pandemic. And I know our board was front and center to that. And our board chair, Candace Spilsbury, was active in the initial structure of the an emergence of the emergency food task force. So they were an important part to this and supporter of throughout the entire region. of how we can build our capacity and food resources for the entire community. So thank you for that, for the board, and Candace for your leadership on that.
Thanks, Tom. I'm just going to skip ahead to the next slide. This is just a picture of the bus backing up. My first bus to Coheman when I was supporting the team there, backing up with, I think it was 60 hampers. The bus came so close, and then next thing you know, the whole area was full of green bags. It was really cool. What we quickly found out is that the food program, it actually was way more than the food. It was creating us an avenue for connecting with families on a regular basis, like a reason, not just constant phone calls, but saying, hey, how's the food? Do you need some food? But we're also nourishing the mind and the body. We were checking in. We were saying, we see you, we care, we miss you, we support you. What can we do for you? Those ongoing conversations led into stories and relationships, lots of laughter. We also were finding out what the family's needs were at home for supporting the learning at home programs, delivering of technology, learning materials. We were able to connect with families and say, hey, here's other support stuff for you. We can deliver applications. Tom and the team made these amazing pamphlets that we could bring to the families that had names and contacts of other supports that they had. Many staffs gave testimonials of I've never been to that part of our community before. I've never actually been to my family's homes before. We had so many staffs going into the community and on a regular basis visiting homes, which you see at the bottom right-hand corner. Some families were starting to bring us into the homes, and then we had the Mini O, which is an amazing program, and we're delivering that at homes and going and visiting local parks. And in many, many cases, the food was the access point for these amazing, deep, meaningful relationships to keep the parents connected to us, the schools, and some to important learning opportunities. So it was started with the food, but it became so much more than the food.
So a lot of this has been covered already, just to highlight that collaborative piece and how that grew and got integrated into everything that we do. And just, you see both on the left picture, you see the boxes of food that were delivered in the summer, and all the fresh food, as well as eggs and everything we could pack into there to feed a family of 4 for at least 2 meals a day for 4 days. And then you see converted to, those are bags of food that hold about the same amount. And the bags we got from, I think, the dollar store, because they were easy to port, and they had handles. So we shifted to that as well. And as you can see, our buses were involved, we had volunteers involved, and we're calling families on a regular basis. Colleen? You're on pause. I mean, you're on mute.
There we go.
That wasn't on
Thank
purpose.
you, Tom. So now the Nourish program has expanded into 15 or more schools. Fatima and the team have been very flexible, pivoting on the spot each week to the needs. Some schools, depending on the population's needs, require more food than other weeks. Fatima has been very flexible in meeting those needs. I think in the report, it said about 1,600 meals a week, breakfast, lunches, and snacks. 20 schools are getting Starfish backpacks now each week in a variety of numbers, and that's flexible as well. Karina has been very flexible each week in meeting those needs. And we still have incredibly large teams delivering food to homes. Indigenous support workers and youth care workers and teachers and principals and vice principals are still going to homes and delivering hampers, especially to the families that are on our DL programs and our outreach programs. So we're still carrying on those connections. It's had a huge impact on our schools and our relationships. And it's because we've been so good to work with each other. Our communication has been open and ongoing. And we've been all very flexible in supporting each other.
And you see COVID cooking to the left. That's Fatima literally stirring the pot, and that is actually Rod crying. as he's preparing food. He's actually smashing onions. So I caught him one day and he was in tears, cutting all the onions for food production. We're almost at the end. So as we look at that and the coordinated efforts of the school district and staff and distributing funds, there's a Coldmount Provo. That is the kitchen on the top right-hand corner. Before it was a kitchen, and that is the kitchen. And on the left-hand side, and if you see, that is the new area that they've expanded into, and that is a brand new walk-in freezer that's about the size of a small or might be bigger than a small container, that they've expanded to be able to hold food and prior to preparing it and keep it frozen. So an incredible, we still have PACs that are supportive. We can't forget about the parent community that have always stepped up. The principal and vice principal teams that coordinate with Nourish and contact the families on a weekly basis. Again, I raise my hands to Colleen, who helps coordinate that and contact the principals and vice principals and feeds the numbers through a spreadsheet to Fatima and Corrine. And again, those volunteers are from all over the district. Every aspect and every part of our organization have stepped up, from bus drivers to EAs, as already been mentioned. And also, I would actually like to thank Craig McLeod, that stepped up recently this year to look for ways that we can have grants, because the normal fundraising can't happen the way it did. You can't have the galas anymore. And he actually raised and found grants of $110,000 in a relatively short period of time to help sustain the food program and help sustain Nourish. And really, that brings us to our final slide, and recognizing all those that have helped to make this truly a cooperative community venture, thanks to the vision of the board and the support and undying support that the board has had in understanding that food is directly related to education and to supporting our kids in their learning through making sure that they are taken care of. And that culture of care, which is in the strategic plan and is uppermost in our minds, and continuing to keep the humanity in our children front and center, and humanity within our community front and center. And that picture is of Colleen, and the person to your right
Is Adriana.
Is Brianna, that works in the kitchen at Alexander and takes food that they get from Nourish and creates it into wonderful, tasty lunches and breakfasts and snacks for the kids at Alexander. And again, fostering healthy, safe, and resilient communities that build on the unique identities of our learners, allowing them to thrive. So I'd like to thank the board for continuing to work in partnership and to feed our Chachas Menem. And again, I can't thank Corrine and Fatima and the leadership that they provide, and the direct just elbow grease, continually hard work for long hours to make sure that our Chachas Menem and our families are well fed and well nourished, mind, body, and soul. So, Haisapka, Siam Natsiya.
Thank you very much, Tom. That was, thank you for helping facilitate these wonderful people coming to talk to us today. I'm blown away by how much food has come to. I was privileged to be a clerical at Coheman Elementary in 2017 when this all began. I saw the first lunches rolling out and the first starfish packages rolling out, and it was so exciting. And who would have ever thought I know you never did, that it would get to, well, what did you say? I wrote it down somewhere. All those people, 350,000 meals? Like, that is just crazy. So thank you very, very much. We appreciate the work every day. We appreciate our students being fed. It's extraordinarily important to their learning and their soul and their happiness. So thank you. We appreciate you. Trustees, is there anyone else that has a comment? Trustee Salisbury?
I just echo how amazing you guys are, and you're appreciated so much by not only the board, but the board's a very small part of this. It is appreciated by everyone in our schools and in our community. So thank you so much. And Nourish Cowichan, congratulations. What a track record, and Starfish as well. As Fatima mentioned, Nourish Cowichan, or Fatima, I'm not sure who, became aware of the need in our community. And at the same time, the province has now recognized that there is a need provincially. So if our board was wanting to suggest to the province what they could do to be helpful to your programs, what should we say?
Oh, we've
Great
been
question.
actually trying to exchange some of the things we've been doing. I actually did promise the ministry that we'll send today. I think for us looking forward to this, what we want to do is to be able to share with anybody at the districts how we created Nourish. Because it's all about community and leadership. That's all it comes to. And having honest conversations about the issues that are going on within communities and the schools. Would like to be able eventually to put this program together in a way that we can share with other communities what we have achieved, our faults, and how we pretty much had to fight through all the shortcomings that we had. There weren't many, but there was a lot of lessons that needed to be learned. And learn what the priorities were. And it is still that every single day for us, there's never a boring day. I find myself not wishing for a vacation, but for a boring day where my brain can shut down. Seriously, somebody asked me, would you like to go on vacation when this is over? I'm like, no, I just want a boring day where my brain is not flooded. But it does keep us engaged. And I think that is what we need to talk more with the people out there, is having that honest conversation. We're going to need to get to the point where, and doesn't necessarily have to be Nourish, but together it will be identifying programs like Nourish, because I'm pretty sure there's more in the province, more folks that have done what we're doing, and bringing those people together so we can create, let's start with a provincial program that works in every single school. Because we can't keep just going through this entire time. We live in a first world country. We should have a program that's universal to every single school in our province that works, that's sustainable. I think for me, that will be the biggest goal for Nourish, to be able to sit at the table with other organizations and have that conversation. Where do we go from here? How do we make sure there's not a single child in all our communities that's left behind? That will be my biggest request. I think it's time. It's time that that becomes a priority for every single district. Thank you, Candice.
Wow,
Thank you.
thank you. Any other comments from trustees? Well, just thank you again very, very much.
Thank you.
It was a wonderful presentation. We know more now, and it's quite unbelievable, really, what you've accomplished.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Aishka. Eowith.
Thank you. And I will
Okay. All right. Well, I think we'll move on now to Hannah Morales, our District Indigenous Education Inquiry. So if we could have Hannah brought in, that would be great, please, Claire. Hi, welcome, Hannah. It's good to have you here today. I hear you're going to give us some results of our education inquiry.
I am. I'll just pull up my screen. And first I'll do a quick introduction. Hi, I'm Hannah Morales. I'm the coordinator for Indigenous Student Success here in the district. I'm a member of Cowichan Tribes, and Heitsepka for having me here today. So last year I had the opportunity to work on the Yatwa-Squales Appreciative Inquiry Project. And so that means the days ahead. Today, I'm going to give you a quick summary on some of our findings. So first, just a little bit about the project. The Cowichan Valley School District, Indigenous Education Department, and education directors from each of the local nations agreed to work with our Indigenous, First Nations, Métis, and Inuit learners, families, and communities to renew the vision and goals we have for Indigenous learners. To do so, we conducted interviews to gather information and stories that will inform us as we create a modern vision for our education department programs and services. In the winter and spring of 2020, the Indigenous Education Department set out to visit every school in the district and interview at least 4 Indigenous students from different backgrounds, experiences, and needs to gather as much information as we could. In total, we interviewed 91 students, 59 in elementary and 32 in secondary. And we also interviewed 6 parents and guardians to hear their perspective as well. It is our hope that through gathering these stories and experiences from Indigenous students in the Cowichan Valley School District, we will become better informed regarding what students and community hope for their education experience. So let's start with what gets students to school. Above are the most common answers when asking Indigenous students what motivates them to attend school. In both elementary and secondary, friends are the biggest motivation. Some expressed this was for socializing, and a few stated that they do not want to leave their Indigenous friends alone in classes. Some students also expressed that they don't always see their Indigenous friends that often and don't have many opportunities to make connections with one another. It is also important to note that in secondary school, the second highest reason students go to school is to graduate. Many also saying their plans for post-secondary when I ask them. One saying, honestly, no one in my family has gone to university and I want to break that tradition. An ongoing goal for the Indigenous Education Department is to address and challenge the racism of low expectations. Hearing the goals of Indigenous students is a reminder to encourage and validate students' growth and potential. Students were asked to describe what they think it means or feels like to belong. A selection of their answers are stated here. Their answers ranged from knowing people well and not having to pretend you're someone you are not, to feeling comfortable and good about yourself. Secondary students were then asked where they have felt like they belong at school. The various answers they gave are outlined above. 13 stated they feel like they belong in their current classes. 2 said in the Indigenous support room. 2 said general support rooms. 3 said in flex. 3 said at lunch with their friends. 3 said in Hulkaminam class. And 4 said that they have never felt like they belong at their current school. One student at Cowichan Secondary said that they only felt like they belonged at school in the Indigenous room, as that is where she knew everyone and felt safe. Which brings me to my next point of providing space. While conducting interviews, a common theme among some schools was the desire for a space for Indigenous students. At Cowichan Secondary, 4 out of the 7 students that I interviewed, and those 4 were also the only 4 Cowichan status students that I interviewed, and they all expressed how their safe place at the school, the Indigenous room, was now open for all students, and they no longer felt like they had a place to feel truly comfortable. 2 out of 7 students also expressed that they would like more classes than Hulkaminam for Indigenous students to spend time and learn together. At Francis Kelsey, 2 students mentioned that they were meant to have an Indigenous student room, but it has not happened yet. They expressed that they do not want culture just with teachings, but with a space as well, a space for them to come together and get to know one another. Additionally, in elementary schools that had an INED room, such as Cohiman, it was mentioned as a favorite space in the school. I understand that having a designated Indigenous room has both pros and cons, and that the goal in eliminating these rooms is to foster a more inclusive environment. If we cannot provide a physical space for Indigenous students, we should think of what other opportunities we can create for Indigenous students to find belonging and community. A unique finding was that when asked about a teacher who believes in them or a teacher they enjoy, 7 students discussed a teacher that they have had more than once in their educational career. When asked how someone can earn their trust, 18% of secondary students said that it takes time for them to trust others and that they need others to continuously show effort in order to gain trust. This continuity of teachers helped build a stronger bond, and those students said that they felt that those teachers truly knew them. Schools, such as Cowichan Valley Open Learning, have pods in which the students are with their pod and teacher throughout their schooling. Every student interviewed at CVOLC, which was 5, expressed that these pods are a positive aspect of their school and knew that their teacher believed in them. One student at CVOLC's pod teacher was actually also their kindergarten teacher, and that student expressed that that really helped them trust and appreciate their teacher, and that teacher really likes how they were able to continue that journey with that student. There is power and importance in intergenerational learning, and the Indigenous students of the Cowichan Valley School District recognize this. One student at Tanzer Elementary talked about how he loves to learn from his aunt, Laura Antoine, who teaches at the school as a Hulkaminam language and culture advisor, saying, "She is very wise and I love hearing her stories. I love learning from her because of her storytelling and experiences." Another student at Maple Bay Elementary also mentioned Laura Antoine, who's her grandma, and how she loves to see her at school because she is one of me. A desire for more cultural teachings and activities is vibrant in Indigenous students. Some examples of areas they would like to see more Indigenous culture are canoe pulling offered as a sport, to go more places that involve their culture on field trips, to play the bone game, have songs and dance, carving, more inclusion of elders, more opportunities to learn and speak Hulkaminam, Métis lessons in secondary school, and cultural teachers to come in more than once or twice a month in the elementary level. We are also able to meet with a handful of parents and guardians to hear their perspective as well. When asked what values they think a teacher should have, parents and guardians gave the following answers: open communication, attentive with students, understand that we all learn in different ways, cultural teachings, and encouraging positive friendships and acceptance of everyone. When asked if they believe that their school has these values, they all said they do or are working on them, understanding that it can be difficult to do so. In regards to cultural teachings, one said, "They do, but I think they could have more. They are doing better than when I was in school." When discussing differentiated learning, one parent expressed gratitude that Cowichan Secondary offers the work studies program that allowed their child to stay at Cowichan Secondary and not have to go to a different school. I asked each level of students and parents what their dream school would include. I got a wide variety of answers, from more technology, mental health awareness, and smaller class sizes to self-paced and bigger playgrounds. The most common answers are stated here. In elementary, they said they wanted more time outside. In secondary, they want more culture, and parents and guardians also share the desire for more culture as well. So who is missing and what are our next steps? While I was going through some of the report findings, you may have noticed that there was a subgroup missing. Due to COVID and time constraints, I was not able to meet with students who are now disengaged and not attending school. This group is important for us to meet with, as they will let us know what did work for them, but more importantly, the conditions in the system that pushed them out. This spring, we hope to reach out to disengaged students and chat with them about what systems worked and didn't work for them. From all the information gathered, we will create action items to incorporate and pilot next year. We have also shared this information with the local nations, and our upcoming data will also help give them information on what programs they might want to instill in their nations. If you would like any more information on the results of this project, I didn't touch on all of the pieces, just let myself or Larry know and we can get that to you. And Heitseka for having me. And for all of I had a lot of help with this. Once COVID hit, all the INED teams and principals really helped take up this project with me. And so I really appreciated that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was really interesting. You were very in depth. Like I felt, you spoke to a lot of people, you found a lot of information. I really look forward to hearing what's missing for the ones that aren't there, that we may be able to improve on and keep them there longer, of course. But it was great. Thank you so much. Do other trustees have any questions or comments? I guess not. Well, you were very, very clear. Thank you. Great.
Thank you.
Okay, now I guess we get Larry brought in, please. Is he with us? Not yet. Oh, there he is. A much younger version, I must say. So, Larry, I gather you're going to tell us a little bit about our proposed rugby academy. Well, there you are, the one now.
Heitseka, Joanne. Yeah, that was me in grade 1.
Grade 1, quite cute, I have to say.
Yeah. You know what? I don't get to use this one very often, but I'm going to say Ait Snate, which means good evening. Ait Snate CM Nisiet. Yeah, it's good to see you all, my respected friends. I want to see them now. I hope you're all doing well this evening. I got a quick presentation. I'll go through it fairly fast because I know that we have another meeting that we need to get to as well. I can share screen here. Hopefully I'll get it all set up. And there we go. So yeah, I'm here today to talk to you about a rugby academy that one of our schools is interested in getting started. This school, Cowichan Secondary, is interested in setting up this very exciting program to be run out of their school. It's going to be for students all around the Cowichan Valley, of course, students around BC, but also students around Canada and around the world, opening the doors to a number of people to be able to come and learn about rugby from people in Cowichan, and hopefully some skills that they can take and move forward into post-high school, whether it's in community sport or even more professionally and with some of our competitive teams at college or university. So the Rugby Academy, I gave you a number of documents. They should have been sent out last week. You've got the one document in the top right here is kind of the brochure, just a summary of the exciting program that'll be available to them, a little bit of information about the program. And then there's a full-on proposal. It gives you kind of the specifics about the program as well. I'm not going to talk to all of it, but I'm going to hit a few of the key points in my presentation here today. So a quick kind of summary of the program. It's a half-day program. It'll be a full year program. So for half of the day, this cohort of students will stay together. And during that half day, they'll engage in rugby activities, learning the sport, learning the how to play the game, but also learning the kind of what's behind the scenes of the game, learning about personal fitness, learning about the rules of the game, officiating the game, all of those things that go along with learning in depth what rugby is all about. The hope is that there'll be, in a traditional semester system, it would be 2 courses each semester, a half-day program running right through the whole year. I've given you a list of some of the courses that they're looking at potentially offering as part of this program. Now, this could be a program that a student may engage in for, say, grade 11 and their 12 year. It's not exclusively for one school year. And you may find some kids may even come, because you can see a whole fleet of courses there. They may come and decide to do this for grade 10, 11, and 12. I do want to highlight, though, although you may see some kids come to this program who have aspirations to continue on and do great things in rugby beyond high school, it is not explicitly for elite rugby players. It is for all students. So all students can choose to participate in this, learn about the sport, refine their skills, and maybe continue on into community play should they desire to, or continue on into officiating or coaching. Now, this program, it is an academy. As part of an academy comes some fees. The fees help to pay for getting the professional coaches in line, providing space on fields should they need it, maybe dry land training. It pays for all of that. It pays for the equipment that they're going to need to do the program. I've outlined the fee structure there for you. So for any student, SD 79 student, a school district 79 student, it'll be $275 a month or $2,750 per year. Now, if we do any recruiting out of province, those students will be subject to kind of the international fees because they're not a resident of BC. They'll have to pay their tuition just as international students do, but they'll be subject to a $7,500 a year fee to participate in the program. And then the international students will pay $15,000 a year to be part of the program. Now you may ask, well, why is it so much? Well, there's a lot of complexities around getting the students here, providing the education piece, providing the program for them. All students that are residents of BC get funded partially for the courses and stuff through the Ministry of Education. For students outside of BC and outside of Canada, you can't. Additionally, the insurance piece, the medical insurance, is going to be a lot higher for these students as well. So that's why the excess money in there. And also, we're charging a little bit of a surplus to the students outside of BC and outside of Canada to help provide a hardship fund. That hardship fund will be for students who wish to play but can't afford to play. We want to make sure that this is an inclusive program. So if we've got some students in the Cowichan Valley where finances are a barrier to participating, well, we'll be able to tap into some dollars that'll be parked to make sure that we offer those opportunities to these students. Now, as part of this, putting together this proposal, I did task Darcy Hoff at Cowichan Secondary with approaching their PAC, doing a presentation to their Parent Advisory Committee about the program, as well as the fee structure. And I've just pulled an excerpt out of their minutes where they have passed a motion receiving the presentation and accepting the fee structure. And those documents, those full documents, the letter of support is in your package, as well as a copy of the minutes there with highlighted this little excerpt from the minutes as well, approving the program. Now, Rugby Canada, this Rugby Academy that we're providing, I'm really excited to announce that The lead person, the person who's going to take the lead in coordinating this, organizing the employees, the staff that's going to run the program, is our very own born and bred Robin McDougall. Now, for those of you who don't know Robin, Robin is a Cowichan kid who was played rugby at Cowichan Secondary, played rugby for the Piggies, the Cowichan Rugby Club, and then went on to represent Cowichan and BC and played for the national team. World-renowned player, but in addition to that, he continued his career in rugby and became a professional coach. He coached the Mexican ladies team to the Olympics. So quite excited to have him. His program that he runs is a program that is offered in Saskatchewan as well. And he's bringing that similar program to the Cowichan Valley, bringing it home, if you will. He's now moved back and living in the Cowichan. Now, you may ask, well, as part of the sales pitch, why Cowichan? Why the Cowichan Valley? Well, certainly the weather is a huge one. For those programs that run to the east of BC, especially to the east even of the lower mainland, they battle with the weather. Whereas here, we can play rugby year round. As you know, how often do we get snow days? I'm going to jinx it and we'll end up with one tomorrow. But how often does it snow here in the Cowichan Valley? We're able to get out on the fields and we can practice year round. That's a big draw to people across Canada and internationally. So that's a huge advantage to come to the Cowichan Valley. Also, if you're not aware, Cowichan Valley is known for producing really good rugby players. The Cowichan Rugby Club has pushed out quite a few rugby players who've continued on and actually gotten scholarships to play at universities and colleges. So the big thing though, for me, one of the reasons why I'm pursuing this academy with Darcy and the team at Cow High is pretty much one of the big things is trying to keep our students in the Cowichan Valley. Right now, we are surrounded by school districts that have academies. We lose students to neighboring districts for academies. This is a great way to keep our students in the Cowichan Valley. And not only that, even recruit some of our neighboring districts' students to the Cowichan Valley. Huge benefit. And as you all know, we're in constant competition with all of the private schools in the Valley as well. We're kind of unique in that fashion where the Cowichan Valley has got a number of private secondary schools in the Valley that we compete with. Many of them have very competitive sports teams. Robin McDougall chose Cow High as the place where he wants to run this. He didn't choose Shawnigan Lake Boys School or Shawnigan Lake School or Brentwood School. He chose Cowichan Secondary because he wants to give back. He wants to give back to the community. So that's pretty exciting opportunity for our students in the Valley, as well as for our community to have such a internationally and nationally known coach coming to support our students. Here's just some pictures of his program McDougall Rugby that he runs out of Saskatchewan that he's supported kids. Yeah, so that's just kind of the program, a quick summary of the program of what we can offer with it. Any questions or comments? Elizabeth, I see your hand up.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if our fields are in good enough shape for the rugby players, or will there be some upgrading needed?
Oh, great question, Elizabeth. So a couple of points on that. One is we do have the Cowichan Rugby Club they've got an incredible field up there. So we would have access to that. Our current pitch, it's workable. It's workable for sure. And as you've seen with the new Cow High, there's a plan to put in a brilliant field there. And I know the Cow High rugby team has played on that pitch for many years. So I would imagine they're going to be there. I would guess that they're probably going to play their games up the hill at the rugby club though. But I'm just speculating on that. Yeah. I see Joe Thorne. You got your hand up? Yeah, Joe?
Yeah, I do. I think it's a good idea for self-esteem, pride, the challenge of competition It worked for my daughter and two sons who played rugby at Cow High, and my sons are still playing rugby. I have one that has traveled down to Florida. He's been to Texas. He's now getting ready, when this COVID is over, be going to Australia to play. Two of my kids have been scouted. One refused, but the other is interested. He's still in Cow High now. He grads this year. So yeah, I believe in sports. It's always been healthy. It's great for building confidence, self-esteem, pride, and it makes you want to share that. And the athletes themselves, to me, become role models. Much like the individual you just mentioned, Mr. McDowell.
Yeah. Thanks, Joe. Candace, I did see your hand up as well. Yeah.
Thank you for a very clear presentation. Just a question, and then I have a motion. The question is, for the international students, they would be paying the tuition for the school district plus the charge for this program. Okay.
You betcha. Yeah, I don't want to lose that piece there. So Liz Gamble, as well as Kevin O'Donnell, played an instrumental role in pulling this together with Darcy. They did a lot of the work in recruiting Robin McDowell and getting them all excited about this opportunity. So yeah, and I see this as a huge draw for international students. Yeah, if we were to open the mic for Liz Gamble, I'm sure she could go on for about half an hour about how much benefit this will be for the international program.
Okay. Well, it sounds very exciting, and I'd like to move a motion that BEBC recommends to the Board of Education approval of the Cowichan Secondary Rugby Academy. So,
Do we have a seconder for that motion? Trustee Croft? Okay, any discussion? Trustee Thorne? Are you waving? No? Okay. So, any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Motion carried. And thank you, Larry, for the presentation. I got almost all of it before my internet threw me out. And Carmen on the chat asked if the rugby club would be charging for the use of their field.
I can't speak to that. I would imagine they would, but they built that into the budget. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right. It's up, everybody.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll move on to the York Road report, and it is 5:11. We actually can carry on. Is that you, Mr. Sandquist? Oh, it's you, our superintendent. Thank you, Ms. Gray.
Heichka and Snate, as Larry indicated, good evening. And I've asked Jason already to walk through the report with me. I have some highlights on my notes. And Mr. Sandquist, you'll be able to scroll with me, I'm assured. All right, so firstly, I want to let the board know that this report was certainly a collective effort. Many people at the district level certainly put their heads together and really worked toward providing this report for the board this evening. So we have some background, and the background would have been that as of April of 2020, Island Health announced the relocation of the overdose prevention site within a wellness recovery center to be located at 5878 York Road. The proximity of this proposed new location of these services to 3 of our schools, as well as being in the middle of an area frequented by our students, caused some upset in the community and certainly with this board. In the new school year, there was an increase in reports of untoward activities around this particular area. That was observed by the district here. And overall conditions around the area were reported to be much worse than in years past. There was a public response. It came with a number of growing concerns, culminating in a walking protest in late September in an attempt to have the site moved to another location. This board of Cowichan Valley School District also wrote to Island Health, adding its voice to the opposition. Island Health responded publicly to community concerns, but stated that there were no other location that was suitable for this particular offering of services. The board had a response with a motion, And in response to concerns from the parents and students, the board convened a special open board meeting on September the 28th, and the following motion was passed. And that is in the report, and it involves number one, a safety audit. Number two, the results of a parent community survey conducted to provide background to seek feedback on a proposal to close the campus at Quamachin School and to seek alternate options to increase student safety. And three, the results of discussions between the superintendent and the administration of Quamachin School to determine the need for any increased resources to support a closed campus. There was also a district response. The school district had been working on temporary solutions as issues arose. This was ensured needle pickup at school properties were prioritized and regular site checks were done. There was temporary fencing that was installed to close off areas of the school district property. We increased funding to Quamachin School for additional noon hour supervisors. We increased noon hour supervision by school administration. They did that work well. We created the parent and community survey and asked Quamachin administration to survey students. So we had a survey that went out to parents, and per the board motion, this was conducted. And from the 477 survey respondents, they found the following. Nearly 80% of students left the campus at lunch. Of those, 94% go towards the York Road area. 56% of students who go there responded that they feel safe. 61% of students do not feel their child is safe when they go off school grounds at lunch. And 61% are not in favor of closing Quamachin campus. And 52% felt that current safety precautions were enough to ensure student safety. That was the initial survey. The student survey that was administered by Quamachin School stated that 79% feel safe going off school property at lunch, and 93% of the students do not want to close campus. In addition to that, the school district, we actually worked with many parts of our community, and we established information from each one of those community partners. And they included the RCMP, Warmland House Shelter, Island Health, and the municipality of North Cowichan. And so the help I want to review from each of those organizations. So the RCMP, they offered to coordinate increased patrols of the area with officers from the RCMP, as well as Blackbird Security and North Cowichan Bylaw. In mid-October, the RCMP contacted the district regarding the positive changes that had occurred in the area. And it was mutually agreed upon at that time to scale back the increased patrols and revert to an as necessary or as time permits patrols of the area. After continual monitoring of the area by both the RCMP, the district, and school-based staff, there has been no need to revert back to the scheduled patrols. The proactive measures in the area have had the desired result from the RCMP. And of note, the numbers of RCMP officers on the bike team has increased, and their mandate is to work in areas like York Road on a proactive basis. With regard to Island Health and Warmland House Shelter, both Island Health and Warmland House Shelter are committed to work with the school district. And of course, Warmland House provides staff to patrol and clean up outside the building area. Also, with regard to Phoenix Wellness Clinic, which is being located at 5873 York Road, they have hired an outside supervisor, and they are present on the property from 6 a.m. until 4 p.m. every day. They also provide Sharps pickup on the area surrounding the clinic. And then if we speak in terms of Cowichan Valley Wellness and Recovery Center, there are security services provided in partnership with the local government through the Safer Community Plan, regularly patrolled by Blackbird Security and bylaw officers from Duncan and North Cowichan. And the Sharps pickup, it is done 7 days a week, 4 hours per day throughout York Road and the Beverly Corridor, with schools as a priority. And so that is actually a service that Cowichan Valley Wellness and Recovery Center provide. In addition, the municipality of Northern Cowichan, they have certainly been contributing bylaw services and also political pressure towards Island Health by their elected officials. The Quamachin School response. They have responded in a number of ways. They have provided the additional noon hour supervision. There's also been that increased police presence through their reporting of such activities that may be those untoward activities. There has been the increased presence of Blackbird security, and also the addition of the staff from Warmland in place on York Road. So this is what Quamachin has seen during their observation in this particular area. With the additional supervision, there was a noticeably marked reduction in number of individuals on the street appearing to be in need of support, and also a massive reduction in instances of open drug use. This reduction of open drug use, coupled with the fact that the students continue to do a very good job of being respectful and mindful in the community, has completely reduced concerns from Quamachin in the York Road area. Since the board motion, students have continued to have the option to choose to leave school grounds at lunch, and since then, they have not had any reported instances of negative interactions of unsafe situations with members of community in York Road corridor. And the other matter, Quamachin School uses proactive student education and is working on a major empathy project with students, which has had an overwhelmingly positive results. Connections between the school district and new supervision supports. The school district admin team enjoys a positive relationship with our larger community, including the directors at Warmland, Warmland staff and other supervisors, local bylaw officers, and support from the RCMP when we require their services. And then lastly, there was a supplemental survey that was done with regard to a student perspective, December the 17th in 2020, which was not very long ago, about a month ago. And only students who frequent the York Road area, for an example, Esso, McDonald's, Wendy's, Tim Hortons, at least once a week were surveyed. So only those students. 84% noticed additional supervision on York Road. 37% of the students believe this additional supervision contributed to overall feelings of safety. 63% said additional supervision has not increased their sense of safety and they have felt safe all year long. And 2.3% said they still do not feel safe. And lastly, with regard to the district did their own data collection between December the 2nd and December the 16th, where district staff walked along York Road corridor 3 times a day, making and recording observations. So in summary, over the 11 days of observations of the corridor area on York Road, almost always at least one community support was visible in the corridor, often at least 2. The number of students varied depending on time of day and weather, with most walking the area at lunch, and there appeared to be more present after school than right before school. There were also 5 occurrences of perceived negative behaviors by vulnerable adults witnessed, none of which appeared to have an impact on the students. So in conclusion in this report, the board, community, schools, and partners mobilized very quickly for the safety of our students. Following the multiple layers of supports to address the initial increase of issues, they quickly dissipated, then a more sustainable method was employed. Now there are many fewer reported issues at times of day when students frequent the area. Community partners and organizations have committed to reinitiating any and all supports to ensure students stay safe. Quamachin is using a proactive student education to create empathy in students. And then lastly, with visible issues dissipating, vocal community concern has decreased. From survey of parents, community, and students, the majority of students feel safe when they leave the campus at lunch. And the vast majority of the Quamachin students and personnel wish not for the campus to be closed. And so that was just an overall high points of the overall report. And I'm certainly open to answering any questions from the board.
Any questions? Trustee Croft, you're on mute.
Hi, thank you so much. It's just very heartening to see our community coming around this and turning that into an educational opportunity. My question is, the current level support Are we going to continue this? I mean, we feel we have a problem the problem has dissipated, but will we continue our current level of supports?
We certainly have been providing the noon hour supervision. Our community organizations and our partners are ready to support us at any time. I know that Quamitchin School and administration are continuing to do the regular supervision that they've been doing. I think that there's always a concern whether there will be other issues that continue to pop up and what do we need to do to address it. And so I think that that's something we certainly want to continue to monitor, navigate, and be on the ready to support the situation if indeed it does arise.
Any other questions, trustees? Mr. Doman?
How much is it going to cost the district this year on dealing with this issue? I know we've spent probably close to $300,000 in the last number of years, but what is the cost going to be this year?
I may have to pass that excellent question over to our Secretary Treasurer, only because he recognizes the addition of the noon hour supervision, possibly even footprints and our regular patrols. In addition to that, some of the temporary fencing. So there's a number of aspects to the cost affiliated with the situation. I know that our partners have certainly stepped in with requiring some, adding some additional support to the situation. But Mr. Sandquist, is that something that you would be able to comment on?
Mr. Sandquist?
I think I can. Certainly when infrastructure is involved, such as fencing, the costs were a lot more significant. So in the last couple of years, that's where the figure that Trustee Doman has brought up that's been an investment kind of in the past where those significant costs are. It costs the board approximately $7,000 a year for an extra noon hour. So that is on the street. We would look at additional footprints, security, and I'm not sure exactly, how much that has been, but I'm sure we could add a few $1,000s additional to that bill. And then we have that temporary fencing, which is currently up around by the roundabout, and that is approximately $4,000 a year. So we get pretty close to $15,000 for this year there, but there's also the staff time that's sort of sunk and isn't necessarily tracked, or we could look at the hours spent on those surveys, etc.
Thank you. Any other questions, Mr. Doman?
In August, Dr. Shannon Waters told me, and I quote, "No, the school district shouldn't have to pay for any of this stuff." And has VHA offered to pay our costs for any of these things?
Ms. Gray?
Yeah, through the chair. I would have to say no, that has not occurred.
Follow-up, Trustee Doman? Yeah.
Another question. Should the board be approaching VHA if Dr. Waters says what she said, should we be approaching VHA and asking for these costs to be picked up by them? Because this is the kids' money.
Superintendent, do you have an answer to that?
I would leave that to maybe for board discussion.
Okay. Trustee Spilsbury.
I was just going to ask, Madam Chair, if we could pause this meeting. Our public meeting is at 5:30, and
Yes.
if we could come back to this after, it'd be
I
helpful.
was just going to suggest that. My time was just going off. Oh, there we go. So can we pause and come back? Does that work? We all have the link for the next meeting, so we can get to it. Okay. So can we continue on? And I think we've finished the York Road report and we'd be heading into the budget. Mr. Sandquist. Oh, yes.
I think we hadn't quite finished with the report on York Road.
Oh, maybe we weren't. Thank you. Yes.
I think Trustee Doman perhaps was
And Trustee Croft, maybe?
And Trustee Cobb, and then back to me, please.
Okay. Trustee Dolman, did you have something you wanted to add?
Well, let's just start from again. In August, Dr. Shannon Waters told me that, and I quote her, "No, the school district should not have to pay any of these costs, these extra costs, patrols, needle pickup, et cetera, et cetera." And since VHA has not stepped forward and offered to pay for that, should the board be asking VHA to pay these additional costs? Because this is the kids' money, and it's coming out of their educational budget.
Thank you.
Anybody
Trustee
have any
Spilsbury?
thoughts on that?
I was just going to ask Trustee Doman if that was a motion that he's making.
Well, I'd like to make a motion, but I'd like everybody's thoughts on it first.
Any Trustee Croft?
I kind of think that in a way that they should, but I also recognize that as a board, it's up to us to invest resources in keeping the kids safe, and we have to be somewhat fluid in that. If we were going to ask them for $15,000, I'm wondering if there would be better value in saying, well, we've ponied up with all these resources. Is there something else that they have a value that would benefit our students, whether that's educational or resources or that kind of thing? So I'm just saying maybe we could be fluid on that.
Trustee Hutchins, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I'm sorry I'm coming in so late, but to Trustee Doman, I'm not quite sure why it is VHA's responsibility. It's a community's responsibility. I can see your point that why should it be a burden just on the school district to keep our kids safe? It's a community responsibility, so it should be VHA, local government, and the school district all being players in this. But I know VHA is very short of cash, and I find it would be very unlikely that we would be getting a result out of there unless it's a collaborative effort where we all chip in money, including North Cowichan.
Trustee Spilsbury had her hand up first.
Just in response to the question from Trustee Doman, as you know, I attend provincial meetings, and this is a constant topic that other school districts are paying fees around homelessness and addiction. I also agree that this is a community problem. It's not just VHA. So I think we have to think on that about if we want to ask others to contribute. If I think about the meetings that I've been at with North Cowichan City and City of Duncan, they certainly are putting in funding already. So I'm not sure. Island Health is saying that they are going to put in 50 staff in that corridor. So it's unlikely that they would be interested in assisting us. So just my own personal view.
Trustee Doman.
I only came up with that because our local medical health officer, who is employed by VHA, said that to me. And once again, I quote, she said, no, the school district shouldn't have to pay for this. So I'd like to put forth a motion that we ask VHA to pick up these costs.
Would that be a motion directed to the board meeting?
To the board.
Recommended to the board. Mm-hmm.
Right. So is there a seconder for that motion? There is no seconder to the motion.
No, that figures.
Any, Trustee Spilsbury?
I have another motion to put on the table. that BEBC recommends to the Board of Education receipt of the report on York Road corridor as part of the safety audit on the corridor.
Is there a seconder to that motion? Trustee DeGroot. Any discussion on that motion? Trustee Croft?
The report, in talking about the board's activities on this, did not mention that we called on GIHA for a report on the processes of site location, and we did that back in May and June. And I thought that that should be included in the report. Is there a way to squeak that in there?
Trustee Spilsbury?
Could I ask the superintendent if it would be possible to sneak it in?
Superintendent?
Through the chair, of course, we can make that a adjustment in that revision. Absolutely. Thank you very much for pointing that out.
You have an email with the suggested wording waiting for you as well, if that's helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Croft. Any more discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Motion carried. Any more discussion on the York Road report? Okay, now we can carry on to our budget. That would be Secretary Treasurer, Mr. Sandquist. Right?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
You had that look. Uh-oh.
Yeah, I'm ready for this one. In your package, you'll find the budget in the form as required by the Ministry of Education. That's the second attachment. You'll find an amended annual, oh, sorry, that's the third attachment. A second attachment is an amended annual budget reconciliation, which sort of walks through where we started and where we've ended up with the year. But I have a PowerPoint, and I'm just going to go through that because I think that will explain the budget changes in the most simple way rather than looking directly at the document. So I'm going to bring that up. So I'm sharing the screen. And it's got to get till this goes away. And here we go. So the budget was originally created in the spring, utilizing the 4 priorities of the 2020-2024 strategic plan, and they are listed there, and we all know them well: learning, Indigenous ways of knowing, culture, care, and future-focused systems. The board developed budget guiding principles, which have held throughout the budget process from the annual budget to this new amended budget, and they are listed there as well. They're just reintroduced for your information. And where did we start? We had an extensive budget development process in the spring, and it was somewhat condensed because it happened right during COVID times, and we were delayed at the end of March and early April, but we did conclude on time. And we adopted the 2020-2021 annual budget on June 22nd, 2020. And almost immediately, our budget starts to change. So we know it's a dynamic document, and there are a lot of changes, especially in the year that we have had. So we prepared a little bit within our budget in 2020-2021 for COVID. You know, this was March. We weren't sure what the implications would be in their entirety on the education system, but we did anticipate some increased costs in absenteeism, and we did put aside some additional custodial supplies. Looking back at what we set aside, you know, it was nowhere near what we actually ended up implementing. We certainly had no idea how significant these costs were going to be. So thankfully, the provincial government and federal government came forth with grants that assisted those additional services. And I'll go through those in a moment because they're significant to the changes in the budget. So what's happened since the board adopted the budget in June? Many decisions have been made and brought to the board since that's happened. Much attention has been given to ensuring that schools, sorry, I just gotta get this order, are as safe as possible and providing alternative learning opportunities for learners that were not comfortable returning to in-class instruction. So by this, I particularly focus on custodial services and the alternative learning opportunities as the 2 major costs associated with the pandemic. The board has been monitoring those expenditures closely through the review of the monthly financial projections, which come through the Board Education and Business Committee or the board, depending on the timing of when those reports are prepared. And many students shifted from in-class instruction to distributed learning or learning outside of the classroom, and that has impacted the funding received by the board. So we've showed you the impact of the shift from in-class to DL and how at a lower per pupil funding rate, that's had an effect on the funding. So looking at the revenue, what changed over the year? Well, the operating grant went down by $203,000, and that was specifically related to a slight reduction in enrollment and the change of those regular students from in-class instruction to distributed learning. So we reviewed that document recently when that grant was announced. $180,000 came in to support the BCTF mentorship program that's now built within the budget, a bargained item. And then equivalent expenditure also needed to be recorded. So that's an in and out. The board received $122,000 to support extended health benefit costs for support staff. That's now built into the budget. And the initial budget reduced the expectations on international student revenue, but they had to be revised even further down by $120,000 to align with the projections. So what expenditure changes have been reflected in the amended budget? We had to increase legal and investigation fees this year by $40,000 because that's what we were spending. That BCF mentorship program that I mentioned, we had a grievance settlement that was a cost pressure. We, the board amended the local education agreements, which resulted in some additional new language on waiver clauses. And you see the increase there. The programs that were scheduled to end in December for the transition programs, they needed to be continued, and they have been continued with a portion of the additional staffing coming out of the operating budget, and that was brought to the board. There was a library automation software upgrade that had to happen as the system was no longer supportable. We had our average teacher salary go up a little bit. When they say it goes up by $176,000, we don't know exactly the cost of each teacher until we have them all in place in September, and it often fluctuates a little bit. But you can see our estimates were within 0.04%. So it is a big number, but it's not a big number on the total cost of our overall teachers. There was some additional principal, vice principal, and exempt staff compensation alignment with the teacher collective agreement. And then we had a number of miscellaneous staffing and supply adjustments that actually reduced the budget by $250,000. So I want to talk a little bit about the operating surplus. So it started the year at the end of when the financial statements were presented to the board in September at 5.1 million, of which 2.8 was originally restricted and leaving 2.3 available. So all those additional expenditures that I mentioned, many of them had to be funded from the operating surplus, which reduced it, the unrestricted portion, from 2.3 million to 1.4 million. So a reduction of $861,000. So we were tracking that throughout all those changes, and hopefully that isn't a surprise. We are at about 1.445, which is about 1.4% of operating budget. And there are special purpose funds, which we need to chat a little bit about because they've had some significant changes between the annual budget and this amended budget. The first being the Classroom Enhancement Fund, which did not include the remedies or the actual costs of the additional teachers. In the initial budget, we weren't allowed to budget for those remedies in the first annual budget. And then we also have the two new funds from the provincial government and federal government, almost $3.8 million that provided those safe services, or those services, sorry, those safety protocols and those additional teachers for the remote programs. So in the Classroom Enhancement Fund, it's gone up by 1.3 million, as you see here. The main reason you can see being staffing went up by 500,000, so the actual costs related to that are now funded, and remedies, which were not allowed to be included in the first budget. Although we knew we were going to have them, we weren't permitted to budget, and they're estimated for this year at close to $800,000. So those are the remedies that are paid to teachers and the costs for which we're not able to comply with the restored language with the teachers. The Safe Return to School grant, this was $651,000 received from the province of BC. This grant came first. It comes with restrictions on how it can be spent. So the board didn't have discretion on the categories, but discretion within those categories. And you see what they are there. Those are as set by the ministry. Almost $350,000 for cleaning in schools, $138,000 for improved hand hygiene, and those were used to purchase portable hand washing stations and automatic hand sanitizer dispensers. Additional funding for cleaning supplies, masks, and technology. A bigger grant, almost $3.2 million, is the Federal Safe Return to Class Fund. So the board's received the first half of that already. The second half is anticipated, and you allocated the funds as listed there to support Indigenous outreach teachers, to provide remote learning options to families. We supported working accommodations for staff, those that could not, for health reasons, be working within this building. Supported growth in the distributed learning program as a number of students shifted from in-class to that program. Blended learning programs in place at Drinkwater and that should have said Mill Bay Nature School. My apologies, my slide's off. $250 for an anticipated increase in absenteeism, which actually has not occurred at the level that was anticipated to date. So far, that one is holding actually in prior year levels. Additional technology and a computer technician were added to support the needs for technology for those remote learners. Personal protective equipment, air quality and workplace modifications, more custodial, especially for high touch cleaning, and for running the electrostatic cleaners, and then cameras to the buses to assist in tracking ridership. So that's where that money went. So that's resulted in quite a significant shift in the budget bylaw. The one that was adopted in the spring was just under 105 million. This one is just under 112 million. You can see the changes there. In the operating budget of 1.8 million being the increase, a good portion of that were expenditures that rolled over from last year to this year. Plus those other pressures that drew the surplus by about 800,000. The other item you see as a major change is the special purpose funds of $5 million. So I've gone over an additional 1.2 million in the classroom enhancement fund, an additional $600,000 in the provincial return to school grant, and then you add another 3.2 million to that for the federal funds, and we're very close to $5 million for that change. So I wanted to highlight that for you. So I'm going to stop sharing here for a second, see if there's any questions, because I do have then the budget motion.
Trustee Hutchins.
Thank you. On page 40, I think it's the second to last slide you were showing us, we allocated those funds to a host of places where we didn't really know where we were going yet. Are we on target with those expenditures? Or are you finding some are falling short, or some were overfunded? For example, it says 250,000 for anticipated increase in absenteeism.
Not so far. Yeah, so I think that's an area where we're not seeing the expenditures that hitting those levels at this time. I think we will need to look back at those funds in the next month or two as to how to fully allocate them. If that trend doesn't change, but that's a good thing. It's a good thing that our absenteeism isn't increasing as we had thought. Some of the staff that were hired into those positions are actually costing a little bit less because they were newer staff that continued on in those programs. So I anticipate that there'll be a bit of surplus in those funds, but some of that can offset what's been transferred over to the operating budget. We have eligible expenditures that we're carrying in the operating, that $271,000 for teachers that maintain those remote programs. That could come back in here. It's eligible for those federal dollars if it's not spent. So we do have, not calling that a shell game, but we have areas in operating that could be paid for out of the federal dollars to ensure that they're fully expended and take that pressure off the operating budget, which returns those funds to surplus.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Carry on, please, Mr. Chair.
I'll just jump back to the motion then and allow you to read it. Just 1 second here. So I am asking then that the Board Education and Business Committee recommend to the Board of Education that the budget is adopted in the amount of $111,621 and $621,185.
Moved by Trustee Croft, seconded by Trustee DeGroot. Any more discussion on the motion? And all those in favor? Thank you. Motion carried.
I have just a small bit more to go. So thank you. It's a very small amount left to go here. Am I sharing?
Yeah.
It's not moving. Okay. So that really concludes the work of the 2020-2021 budget year. That budget will go forward to the board for adoption on February 2nd and needs to be filed to the ministry by the end of February. But we're already beginning work on the framework for 2021-2022, and we are starting to think about some of the assumptions. So we'll come back to the BEBC next month. But right now we're having to think about student enrollment. So what does student enrollment look like for next year? And that is due on February the 15th. And Karen Blow and staff are working hard on those projections. We're going to need to determine what sort of programs will be in place next year if families are still not comfortable with return to in-class instruction. So will we continue any of these programs that are currently funded out of some of these other funds? Big question around additional custodial cleaning supports. You know, will some of those need to be continued? And then managing the delay in the provincial budget and the potential effect on March 15th. So we know the province isn't slated to deliver their budget as per normal in February. They plan to do so in April, but yet we need to have our funding announcement by legislation by March 15th. So that'll be done likely without 100% assurance of what the provincial government will be allocating to education. So we need to be thinking about that. And then my final slide is just to thank the trustees who have been on this budget journey with us, the staff and the partners who have participated to take us through a very unique budget, one that we didn't have a crystal ball to see what the future was going to look like for this school year when we built it in the spring. We hadn't been through a pandemic before. It's clear that the supports from the provincial and federal government were really key in achieving a balanced budget. Without those, we certainly would have used up all the surplus and be looking at other reductions to accommodate the programs that we have so far. That's all I have.
Thank you very much for all your work. I can't even begin to imagine juggling all those balls and figuring out where they're going to lie, and we really don't know what we do know. So you're doing it all that way. So just appreciate all your hard work, all of you and your team. I mean, we know you work really, really hard. So again, thank you.
Thank you.
I think we move on to committees now. So Trustee Croft, would you like to share the highlights of the advisory committee with us?
Hi, yes, usually at this point we just submit a bit of a summary, a verbal summary. And so in general, staff are feeling somewhat, our educational partners were feeling good upon the return after the holidays. They gave us some advice regarding Coxsila, and in particular that, of course, the programming remains stable and that as we make decisions on spaces in general, that we keep in mind the needs for childcare. And we talked about the budget and we talked about the new school, and those are the highlights. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to move I guess, no, we don't move that. Sorry, that's okay. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Trustee DeGroot, seconded by Trustee Hutchins, and all those in favor. Thank you.